start. I was trying to get my computer pulled up with the information for today. House Taxation meeting will be called to order. Our first item of business is request for bill introductions. Representative Estes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to introduce 25 RS 1725, prohibiting certain sex offenders from entering onto school property or attending school activities and creating criminal penalties for violation thereof.
Thank you. Representative and committee, I just want to, and I'll ask you a question here for just a second. This is not a tax bill, but we've identified kind of an emergency situation. Do you want to speak to the blessing of the bill right quick?
Thank you very much. So much to everybody's surprise, recently there was an incident in Blue Valley that a registered sex offender, child sex offender, came to a school event, and he did beforehand get permission because he is the live-in boyfriend of a parent at the school, and they in fact live across the street from the school. And the school district was put in a very uncomfortable position because we don't actually have a state law that prohibits this. So several of us went to the speaker and said, we need to make this happen as quickly as possible this session. It's too dangerous not to address this session. So I thank the committee's indulgence for taking a non-germane bill.
Yes, and I just wanted to clarify that because typically we don't allow bills that aren't tax related, but this is a special circumstance. So committee, are there any questions?
I would just say proud to have tax committee be against sex offenders. So right on.
Thank you very much.
Any questions? Okay, seeing none, without objection, the request is approved. Any other requests for bill introductions? Seeing none, committee, we don't have a folder for today. We don't have any hearings. If you want to pull up the information, we are going to be working House Bill 2396 from yesterday. So you can pull up yesterday's March 4th folder on the S drive if you want to look at that. But do want to take a look at that, and I'll turn first to the reviser for an overview, even though we just had it less than 24 hours ago. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2396 would authorize the use of a protest petition to limit funding of a taxing jurisdiction by property tax revenues above a certain amount. It would establish the acknowledging stewardship of tax revenue and appropriations, the ASTRA fund. It would authorize certain transfers from the SGF to qualifying cities and counties out of the ASTRA fund. And then it also eliminate the revenue neutral rate requirements by taxing subdivisions and the taxpayer notification and cost fund.
Thank you. Committee, are there any questions? Representative Carlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I asked yesterday about the previous petition rates, percentages, that we might have a kind of an idea what is normal for nowadays. Do we have any information back on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Due to limited time, I was able to, there's approximately, I believe, 200 or so references to protest petitions. I picked the top 30. Out of the top 30 hits I got, these are the, they generally all, protest petition then leads to an election, but the percentages, as you had asked for, out of the 30, 16 were at 5%, 6 were at 10%, and 3 were at 2%. If that gives you any kind of a sampling of.
I think that's very important for the committee to understand. Thank you very much.
Representative Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is, does it state that it's going to be the general election when you have most people turn out, or is it just say the previous election, which could be a school or something small that, I mean, where's our 10% going to come from? Is it going to come from the general or when? Because in Ottawa County with only 5,700 people, I reached out to my clerk and I think 306 would be 10% of the general. So obviously almost everybody voted, but if it was a different kind of vote or a primary, it would have been a much smaller number.
Yeah.
The basis for what this and pretty much all the other examples I could locate were, they base it off the last election of Secretary of State numbers. So you use the jurisdiction you're in, whatever the vote was for the last vote of the general election of the Secretary of State was what the basis for the numbers that go off of.
So general? Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and it is, we say Secretary of State, I think some people get confused. Is that the information from the Secretary of State? It is that exact race. We go back to the last general election for Secretary of State, and we look at that exact number on that race. Okay. Representative Carlin, did you have another question or comment? Okay.
No, I thought I would just help her with that answer, but thank you for the,
Representative Sanders?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So let's go over again why you picked 10%. Based on what Mr. Siebers had to say. So like the majority of the ones you looked at were 5%, and some of them were even as low as 2%. So why 10%?
The ones that I had looked at, and Mr. Siebers did a much more extensive research than I'm sure I did. The ones that I looked at were commonly 5% of the total amount of registered voters, or 10% of the voters that voted in the last election, which if you have a 50% turnout, that's the exact same number. So I just picked the 10% because the reason I didn't go with the total registered voters is because that's a fluent number. People are always moving in, moving away. I wanted a more solid number that people could understand and go to and know exactly what that required number would be.
But that number would vary from election to election.
Every 4 years, yes.
Yeah, okay. But you're saying, so the number would be solid for 4 years?
Right. As opposed to every day you've got new vote, well, maybe not in western Kansas, but some areas you might have those voter rolls are changing daily as people move away and move into the community.
No, I'm good with that. I frankly would like to see it lower than 10%. I would like to see it easier for the voters to utilize this tool.
Questions for the reviser? Any more? Is it for the reviser? We're not debating the bill yet. This is just for the reviser. Any questions on the bill before us? Okay, now, if there's no further questions for the reviser, Representative Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the answer from the previous representative, but I like what we said yesterday, that I'd hate to see 10% shoot something down. So I could live with even 15% or whatever. So, thank you. It was just a comment. Thank you.
Representative Shu?
Mr. Chair, I have an amendment.
I thought you might.
And I can explain and talk about
Yeah,
it.
if you want to explain it, I think it's going to be a fairly simple one, but we'll let the reviser distribute that if you want to go ahead and explain.
Yeah, so what Adam was explaining about the various percentages there, those end up triggering another election. This one would just essentially just kill a budget, basically. And so I think actually 10% is very low of a threshold to kill a budget without triggering another election. And so I'm raising the threshold just to 20%. And just kind of for more clarification, just for my town, I live in Westwood and we have about 1,600 people. Only about 1,000 people voted in that race in the last time around. And so it ends up being like 6% of the total population of the city can kill the budget. And so I think just for the sake of conversation, I think 20% makes a little bit more sense. They still have a say, but the city officials could still feel like they can have a little bit of leeway if they want to.
Okay, it looks like everybody has a copy. Do we have a second before we get on to discussion? Second from Representative Sawyer Clayton. Discussion on the amendment. Representative Corbett.
Thank you, Chairman. I kind of agree with my neighbor here. You know, once it gets to the point that most people who pay taxes don't realize it makes much difference to participate, you get lower number of voters turn out and then it kind of rolls the other way. I think you got to keep this door as open as you can, and it will keep your politicians a little more honest to the dollar. So that's just my comment.
Further discussion on the shoe amendment? Representative Carlin.
I'm sorry, I'm unclear. When I left here yesterday, I didn't realize we were doing this today, but I did look at it a while ago, and I didn't study this part. So the protest petition actually does what? I guess it's the protest petition should, any of them should be based on what the petition says. I mean, the petition can be to trigger an election, or are we specifying that if there's a petition, it throws out the budget?
Yes, that is what the new law
Okay.
specifies.
Okay.
It actually stops it. It does not call for an election because the budget timeline just doesn't have
Okay.
that
I know.
45 days minimum to put that in.
Okay, I just want to say I carried a petition. I ran a petition drive in our community because of a project that the county was doing that I objected to. And we had a 3% threshold, and that was 1,800 votes for us that we had to get on a petition. And we got them. I mean, that was pretty high threshold for the petition carrier. And our petition was well-known because it was a 2-year battle before we got to the petition. So with a well-known issue, it is still very hard to get even 3% because you have to get around to the people to get them signed. And I realize that this is allowing for them to be in the treasurer's office or the clerk's office, but it is too high a threshold, I think, to get the public to react and respond and be that upset to go in and sign a petition. Pardon me?
No, I'm sorry. No, I didn't mean to stop you. I'm sorry.
Well, you did. No, you've been an elected official in a county, I think, and you understand how many people don't know what's going on, and you do have to really have some time to do this. But if you have 3% or 5%, I can live with 5%. I could probably live with 10. I can't support 20. The people will not know until the next day that they missed their chance to do something. And that's the way it works. And I know that's not because that's the way the law is written. That's the way the people respond to an issue. So I'll be voting no on this. Thank you.
Representative Kessler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I apologize. So I kind of just think the opposite of that. I just think that's for a vote. I mean, if you're gonna bring a petition up to bring a vote in front of the people, I think 3%, 6%, 10%, 8%, whatever you want to do, that's a fine number because it's going to come before the people for a vote. This isn't something that's going to come before the people for a vote. This is a petition to stop the action right away and to move on to the next step. And I just think that threshold should be a little higher, just to make that because we're not, like I said, I don't want to confuse this with a petition to bring something to a vote in front of the people. This is not it.
Representative Essex.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the conversation so much. I will share with you, my city does surveys constantly. We're surveying our people all the time. And value for tax dollars was 70%, a little over 70%. They were satisfied with what the city provided for that value of tax dollars. So I'm looking at the other side of this too. You know, petitioners and people that are upset, there's certainly a group of those, but those that are thrilled with the projects that are running and they're happy with the decisions that are being made too, they have to be respected as well. So I think 20 is a great compromise. That's just my opinion.
Representative Sanders.
So I agree with the representative from Manhattan. So on this Ash Wednesday, I say amen to you. But at the very least, if we're going to raise it to 20%, we need to raise the number of days from 30 to 60. Okay.
We don't have time for that in the budget.
All right,
Yeah.
fair enough. Then I'll be voting no on this amendment.
Representative Francis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I know that you kind of have shepherded this through. Was there a reason you picked the Secretary of State's election versus the presidential election? And I guess whatever number we pick, somebody is going to argue against it. And one of the reasons I ask that is there's a substantially higher vote turnout normally in a presidential election than there is in a state officer-only election.
Yeah, the only reason we selected the Secretary of State's race is that is kind of a standard throughout other statutes, kind of for setting that parameter. You could certainly pick any other race, any other general election. You could select a primary election or things like that too, but that's really the only, I wasn't trying to think of what election is going to have the best turnout. I would like to think that your state races with governor and secretary of state and attorney general would be well turned out. Is that the way to say that? You would have a good turnout on those elections too, but I understand presidential races would have that also.
Yeah, so I guess I would make a substitute motion that it would be 10% of the last presidential election. General
Okay.
presidential election.
Okay.
10% of the last, and the reason for that is it's kind of somewhere in between this 10% for the Secretary of State's, 20% for the Secretary of State's. It increases the threshold a little bit, but not a lot.
Okay, so we now have a substitute motion. Is there a second? Second from Representative Carlin. We are now on discussion of the substitute motion. This is conceptual, so is everybody clear on what we are? I might have the reviser, after he finishes jotting that down, state his understanding and make sure the committee, make sure we're all on the same page here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my understanding would be that it would remain at the number would be 10% of the qualified voters of the votes cast for the President of the United States at the last election, that would have occurred.
Maybe general election, right?
Yes, it would be a general election.
Just so there's no, and the reason I do this is just kind of a compromise between some of the concerns of the different group.
Okay. Yes, Representative Wolf.
This is a different subject, but it is about this bill. So when I was talking to my clerk, I couldn't remember the date that you said they would have that number to know what they're working towards their budget. Do you know what when that number would get to the clerk so that they knew if they were in compliance or not?
Which number are you talking about?
The number that keeps you in compliance with your budget. Like, say your budget's $1 million.
Okay, yeah, we need to limit the discussion just to this, motion on the table, or substitute motion. Okay, I've got Representative Smith and then Clayton and then Corbett.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering, the election for the Secretary of State, wouldn't it always be the same as the President of the United States? Not just.
That's it.
No, in Kansas, statewide elected officials are in the off year relative to the presidential election. So the Secretary of State election was 2022, 26, 30. President is 24, 28, 32.
Representative Clayton.
Thank you. And this question might be for the reviser. Bless you. If you'll take it, that is. All right. So no, but it all depends. All right. So my question is this is regarding the substitute motion made by Representative Francis, is that I'm thinking about this from a numbers standpoint. So for instance, 20% of the Secretary of State's election is one number. The substitute motion is 10% of the qualified electors of votes cast in a presidential general, but wouldn't that actually be more people? So it is more people, and that's the intent?
I'll allow
Or is it about the same, or what are we looking at numbers-wise?
Representative? I just want to maintain order. Questions are allowed for the carrier of the substitute motion, so I will allow Representative Francis to answer that.
All right, I just quickly looked up my county, because I don't have the statewide stuff ahead of me. And maybe we should ask research if they could real quickly look at the number of votes. But in my county, it seemed there were about 2,900 in the last statewide Secretary of State election, and there were 4,500 in the last presidential election. So that's that was off the top of my head.
Eddie?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just went to the Secretary of State's website and pulled up the most recent election results for the general elections in 22 and 24. In the 24 presidential election, there were 1,328,000. I'm rounding to the nearest thousand. So the threshold, if this were done on a statewide aggregate basis, would be under that circumstance 132,800 for the state as a whole. The Secretary of State's election 2 years prior had 995,413 votes. And so 20% of that would be 199,000. So on a statewide aggregate basis, 20% of the Secretary of State is a higher threshold than 10% of the presidential, but it is going to vary how much higher and possibly even is it higher based upon location.
Okay, on the amendment or substitute motion, I have Representative Corbett, Shu, and then Wolf.
Thank you, Chairman. I kind of agree with the guy from Liberal, which is hard to do, but it's not only the numbers, but your enthusiasm and people engaged will be a lot higher on a presidential election. And I think that you want the voters to be motivated as much as possible. And the 10%'s a little better number. I'll be voting for your substitute amendment.
Okay, Representative Shu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I like my motion better, but I think the substitute's okay. I mean, I mostly just brought it up as a discussion topic. The chair said it was kind of an arbitrary one that he set, and so I decided on a second arbitrary number. And so this one's kind of somewhere in the middle, and I'm fine with the substitute motion.
Representative Wolf, no. Any further discussion on the Francis amendment? Substitute motion, pardon me. Representative Sanders.
So let me understand, if we vote in this substitute motion, then Representative Shu withdraws his motion?
The way this works is if the substitute motion is adopted, the issue is the question has been put. And the original motion is not withdrawn, it's overruled by the substitute motion.
By the substitute motion, okay.
If it fails, we are back on the original motion by Representative Shu.
Well, I think the way the bill is originally written is not exactly fine, but it's better than either of these motions, so I'll be voting no.
Further discussion on the Francis motion? If not, Representative Francis, do you want to close?
I close.
Did we get a second on that? It was Representative Smith, okay. Okay, all in favor of the substitute motion by Representative Francis, say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, motion carries. We are back on the bill now. I might turn to the reviser. I have a couple of amendments. Let's do the bond amendment first, please. While that is being passed out, I'll go ahead and explain the amendment. It is not my intention to include any voter-approved bonds that might be adopted by a county or city against the threshold. Essentially, if the voters have already approved something, it shouldn't be subject to protest petition or shouldn't be subject to reapproval by those voters. So essentially what this amendment does is pulls those dollars out of the equation. If the voters have approved something, that money that is levied for those bonds and interest is not included in that threshold. So that is the amendment. We have a second from Representative Hoheisel. Is there any discussion? Representative Howerton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I agree with this amendment. I like it. I don't have any communities that I represent that have reached out to me. There was another community that I think this would really help them with because they do have a lot of bonds that have been voter approved. So I like it. Thank you.
Adam, I might have you briefly explain. We do have a start date of July 1st, 2025. Do you want to just help explain to the committee? You probably can do a much better job of that than I can on why we have that cutoff date.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, as the bills are originally drafted, the bill would go into effect July 1. So essentially any election after the bill becomes into effect, where a bond issuance goes to the electors and gets voted on, would then apply for the exemption. Anything before it should in theory already be, baked into the budgets of these taxing in jurisdictions, so that the pre-existing ones would already then be built into kind of the system.
Representative Sanders?
Now, this I like, because what this does is the voters have already voted for something, and this protects that from the overall intent of the bill. So this amendment I like.
Okay, see no further. Representative Turner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm trying to remember the discussion yesterday. So the counties are getting an indication of how much this number might be before they make their decision. So who's making the calculations inclusive of this and other things in order to give them that number?
The way the process works is the county clerks certify all of this data to Department of Revenue, Property Valuation Division, and then PVD will then get that information over to the State Treasurer's Office, the State Treasurer's Office, which is the one that is going to be getting these notices out to the cities and counties about what their threshold is, number one, and then number two, what their estimated payment would be should they qualify for the ASTRA funds.
Okay, so that comes from the Treasurer's Office.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
State Treasurer's Office. Yep. Yeah. County clerks, PVD, State Treasurer. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Representative Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just asking, and again, just lack of knowledge on my part. But if a school district is wanting to build a new school, is this going to automatically throw them above that threshold?
School districts are not involved in this equation.
Okay, thank you.
School district levies are typically set in statute or by the voters already, so they are excluded from this process. Representative Wolf?
So back to the question I asked out of turn. When would the counties get this to know what number they're working towards?
Yeah, I think that's July 15th.
Is that as soon as they can get it because they start working on their budgets in April?
Yes, they do, but that information isn't certified by the clerk until July 1st, so they would not be able to get that information out. We're giving them a couple weeks to get that into PVD and get that turned around so they can make those calculations.
Thank you.
So they should have it well before they would have to actually adopt their budget, but yeah, you're right. The preliminary work on budgets starts very, very early.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Sanders?
But in order to know what number they're shooting for, wouldn't they know that as soon as the election is certified? After the election is certified in November, like in Saline County, it's generally a week, the Friday following not immediately following the election, but the following Friday, the election is certified, and that would,
Representative
then
Sanders,
we would know.
I think we're talking about different numbers. They were talking about the actual dollar amount threshold that they can increase their budget, not the election, not the protest petition threshold.
But that's what I'm saying. The protest petition threshold is based on how many voters there were.
The number of voters, yes, but
And we would know
this
that?
discussion is off of this amendment, so we need to have this at a different
Okay,
time.
all right.
We
Thank
need
you.
to limit our discussion to this proposed amendment. So, Seeing no further discussion, I will close and move my amendment. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Okay, any further discussion or amendments? Representative Long?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have an amendment.
Okay, Representative Long, do you want to go ahead and explain your amendment?
I can. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a simple, straightforward amendment that talks about after a city or county gets paid from this fund, meaning they stayed within their budget plus inflation, on or before January 31st each year, the state treasurer would report to the tax committee in both the Senate and the House with a list of those cities and counties that got payment from the state, meaning the state or the city and counties that stayed within their budgets. The list will not show counties that did not get paid or exceeded their budget. But the reason for this amendment is so through time, possibly we could see a some kind of a measurement or an idea about what counties may or may not be doing. So I'd stand for questions.
Okay, we have a motion by Representative Long, a second from Representative Hoheisel. Discussion on the bill, Representative Clayton, and then Representative Francis. Oh, for a second.
All right. Thank you, Representative, for bringing this amendment. I have a question, and this might be for staff or for you. I just have concerns about if there would be any fiscal effect on the treasurer's office or any staff time taken up by this report, what that would look like.
I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to answer that. Maybe Mr. Siebers could, or Eddie, I don't know.
Eddie might be able to, but it's a fairly straightforward report, which one's got it and which.
Yeah, I'm anticipating this would be something that the, in essence, computer payment system would almost be able to generate for them, but I haven't actually confirmed that with the state treasurer. So I'm learning about this same time as you all, so that's my only hesitation in saying that.
Representative Long, I have a quick question or a comment and request for you. You state, or the amendment states that it's the list of cities and counties that received a transfer. Would you and Representative Hoheisel as the second entertain a friendly amendment to receive a full list to include, we want to know who got it and who didn't?
I would certainly go for that, yes.
Will that be an acceptable friendly as the second? Is that clear, Mr. Siebers? I'd just like to see a complete list of all of the cities and counties and which ones qualified and which ones did not.
Absolutely.
Okay. Representative Howerton.
Can I add to that request?
As long as it's not contingent on.
I don't, maybe. So I would like to see who received funding the first time as opposed to when a petition was filed and then they received funding. I don't know if that may be too complicated. I'm good.
I don't know that the state treasurer's office is going to know that because they're just going to get.
Did they know that by the date?
No.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, because the way that protest petition would work is as soon as if the protest petition was successful, that entity, the city or county, would have to adopt a new budget by October 1st. And so none of that stuff when they certify those budgets to the state, there's no real way to track that.
Okay, I withdraw. Thank you.
That's a good idea, though. Okay, any further discussion on the Long amendment? Actually, it was kind of short, but. Representative Sanders.
But now, you've substituted for the Long amendment, correct?
No, this was a friendly change to the amendment. It was a conceptual change to the original motion. I did not make a substitute motion. As
Okay,
long
but-
as it,
But what we're voting on is what you were talking about was the complete list.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, my apologies if that was confusing at all. So seeing no further discussion, Representative Long, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I close.
Committee, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. We are back on the bill, and I do have one last amendment from me. There might be some from others. Didn't mean to imply that this was the last one, but while they're passing that out, I'll go ahead and explain my amendment. Yesterday, when we had the hearing, there was some questions about whether or not this petition exists. Is each petitioner going to have to make this protest petition on their own, write it up on a piece of paper or spreadsheet? The petition that's for the county clerks or the county treasurers, the public petition, are they each going to have to make their own petition? So I visited with, and I have to commend the Director of Accounts and Reports through the Department of Administration. I emailed her this morning, and she very promptly replied that they would be happy to undertake this. But all this amendment does is designate the Director of Accounts and Reports under the Department of Administration to design, revise, and publish on their website this standardized form of a protest petition. So anybody can go in and download it, print it off, and it's ready to go. The Director of Accounts and Reports, if you're not familiar with them, it's an office under the Department of Administration that typically handles a lot of your budget worksheets. I think they do the revenue neutral worksheet right now, so it kind of fit for them to also supply this form if necessary. But Representative Hoheisel for a second. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Representative Carlin.
Thank you. I just want to say, when I did my petition, the county threw it out because we didn't write it properly, so I really appreciate this one. Thank you.
That is a possibility, so that is another good reason to have this officially created. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried. We are back on the bill. Representative Howerton.
And I have an amendment as well. And while we're getting that amendment passed out, can I ask, I don't mean to badger this whole petition thing, but I'm just really curious that I'm not trying to do gotcha votes, but I think getting the report back, like the amendment with Representative Long, is to see like how effective this is and how it's being used. And so would there be any way to find out how many petitions from?
I think the only way you could determine that would be to require
Thank you.
the county clerks or the county treasurers to report when a petition is available.
I would just be really curious to see how this is working.
Right.
As a tracking mechanism.
I'd have to think about that because
We can think about it, yeah.
yeah, no, and again, I think that's very valuable information. It would be very interesting to see which ones, which elected bodies limited themselves and which ones tried to go above but were subject to protest.
The only way I can think of that now is doing like an LPA audit or something to request it. I don't really want to do that. Okay, so this amendment is just adding in any social media. I was just trying to think about how we communicate this to voters. I think it's very important that it get out there. It said website, but I think maybe social media is a more effective tool that pops up on your feed as opposed to you having to go look at it on a website. So I just added social media. So with that, I move my amendment.
Won't move
motion.
it yet. We'll get
Move
a
it.
second and then
Yeah,
take
second. Thank you.
discussion. So is there a second on the second by Representative Long? Discussion on the amendment? Representative Clayton.
So this is just more, for a legal definition. To me, I feel like social media is still technically a website. What do we look at, as far as those definitions go? I mean, I have no issue with this. I just want to make sure we're not being redundant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, while it's not technically a defined term, this kind of defaults back to the commonly understood terms. Using a program that would, I hate to give out too many examples, Facebook, Twitter, such, that would, that you wouldn't actually own the website. You're using another entity's platform. Is kind of my generic understanding of what social media would entail. I mean, in practicality, there really are no penalties if they fail. It's just, this is really an encouragement for county treasurers to do its best to promote such activities.
And Adam, I might also ask the question, where we're adding this in, the county treasurer's office shall post on its website and any social media. Does that mean that they just have to post it somewhere on social media, or is that defining it as its social media? So if the county clerk has a Facebook page, or I'm not sure what all, I don't use social media a whole lot, so I'm not sure what all different type of platforms exist. I don't want them to just be able to make a post somewhere. It has to be on an official page that they control. Or Representative Howerton, is that your intent, or what?
The county website was my intent, yes. I don't think county treasurers have their own social media. I think it all funnels through the county in most.
Well, I know in
Maybe.
rural areas, the county clerk has a web page or like a Facebook page,
Any and
the
all.
county treasurer.
There we go. However we can notify voters, I think that's the intent. So the best way to get the most notification out there.
Okay. Representative Francis and then Stogstill.
I like the idea, but man, I think this is a hard thing to regulate. I mean, everybody's got different Facebook pages or Twitter. I know in our county, I don't think our county clerk has a page. It's only the county as a whole has a page. So I'm not sure how you really regulate this thing, but I think it's a great idea. But
It was mostly just to say, do all that you can to get this word out to the voters, so.
Well, and bringing that comment up from Representative Francis, we indicate they shall post. We don't really have any penalty, or if they have a website or a Facebook page or a X page or whatever I don't know if they have anything like that, but okay. Yeah, I'm not sure. Representative Stogstill. Any further discussion? Representative Sanders.
So I think perhaps the better word should be, instead of any, all social media. But for what it's worth, that would be better, because any indicates that, let's say you have a Facebook page and an Instagram, so you'd put it on your Facebook page and you could leave it off of your Instagram. So that's why I think it should say all.
Representative Carlin.
Thank you. I missed Representative Howerton's exact words. If it's may post on social media, that might take care of it. I mean, you wouldn't have to, and it would leave it open to whatever's available at that time. And they'll, a lot of times we used to require official newspapers, which I'm not sure we should do that anymore either. I don't know where we stand with official newspapers requirements in law, but we're losing so many. So if we use the word may and just in general social media, I could support that, but I do think it's a difficult thing, and I'm not sure that's why we have a petition, is because people are out there promoting it however they can. Don't want to restrict them, but it's their job as citizens to promote their petition some way. Thank you.
Further discussion, committee. Representative Wolf.
Being from a small county, thank you, Mr. Chairman. People may never go to the treasurer's website, because you open up Ottawa County and then you pick which one you want. So I would prefer if it said the county website and that it's just there when you open it, so you see it. I don't know. Instead of saying treasurer, because maybe you're only going to look at voting or the clerks and you never go to the treasurers to see it. But if it's on that front page of the county website, everybody would see it that way. I don't know. Thank you.
Representative Howerton?
I think I would agree. That was more my intent. Sorry to rush this. But
No.
can we just say the counties, or the county website may? It has to be shall, because that's the only notice they're giving, I think. Because they're not doing mailings, they're not doing anything, and we're not requiring that. So I think it has to say shall, and that they should do that.
The county treasurer's office shall post on the county website.
On the county website.
I think we could
Or
offer a suggestion here. It could read, the county treasurer's office shall post on the county, because all county treasurers are part of the county, on the county website or social media, if such website or social media exists, and post, finish the rest of the sentence.
that would be a wonderful friendly amendment. Thank you.
Is that a friendly amendment?
That is friendly.
Okay.
Thank you for clarifying.
And we got an okay from the second. Was that clear, Adam?
What about the cities? Do we address them?
It's just the county budget.
Okay.
Do you want to read that back? I can't remember what I said. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to try and read the sentence as as I understood it to be amended. The county treasurer's office shall post on the county website and social media, comma, if such website or social media exists, comma, and then continue with the sentence as it exists.
Okay. Is that
Yes.
clear?
Thank you.
Sometimes things sound good up here and they don't come out the same way for some
That was
reasons.
good.
Okay.
No, I appreciate it. I just think it's important that they use every tool that they have
Nope, I
to
agree.
notify.
Representative Wolf?
Sorry. Do we need to put anything for the cities if they're also, nope, just county?
No, because
We'll
the
work-
county treasurer holds all petitions
So
in
they
one
will put it
location.
for a city too?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
If there are any protest petitions in the county, in the taxing jurisdictions within that county, they're all held at the treasurer's office. So, all right, any further discussion on the social media amendment? Seeing none, Representative Howerton, you may close.
I close. Thank
All right.
you.
Committee, you've heard the motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Any further discussion on the bill? Representative Shu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a statement, no amendment to my colleague here. As this fund shares the name of my daughter, I just sincerely hope that this doesn't go the way of the LABTRF. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, as we said yesterday, there's a little bit of accountability to the legislature in here, but not that that couldn't be changed by future legislators as well. We can do our best at the moment we're given. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion on House Bill 2396. Representative Hoheisel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move we pass out HB 2396. I can't remember. Was it amended? Oh, okay.
Times, I think.
As amended.
All right, and a second from Representative Wolf. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you, committee. We are adjourned.